I'll start taking the questions. Any other medical professionals, be it from the evidence-based medicine or from Ayurveda or homeopath, can join the space for a fruitful discussion. Hi, Dr. Abby. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi. Hi, Chirag. Thanks
How are
for
you doing?
hosting this space. I'm fine, thank you.
So we'll start in another minute, just waiting for other people to join.
Okay.
Cool, we are ready to start. So I'll tell you, audience, all the people, why we are doing this space. What happened? There is a recent article about the Giloy use on the Times of India. It published yesterday and today also some newspaper covered that article. And I posted a tweet about it. It got pretty good backlash. People were saying that they have been using Giloy and they have been seeing the immunity benefits, and their grandparents are also using it. But the evidence is not showing such reports that it is really useful or not. So I have asked Dr. Abby Phillips to join. Has been doing many such researches about the Ayurveda and stuff. He will talk about it more.
Yeah, thank you, Chirag. I think can we start then?
Yeah, yeah. Please introduce yourself, what you do exactly. Just tell the audience about it.
Yeah, so I'm a hepatologist, liver disease specialist, and I did my training in hepatology from Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences in New Delhi. And I've been working as a consultant since last 6 years, and I'm a senior consultant. My area of interest is actually herbal liver injury. I mean, I won't say it is purely Ayurveda, but any kind of herbal liver injury is what I am interested in. Apart from that, alcoholic liver disease. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So, doctor, what made you interest in this? What was the calling that you should be researching about the herbal injuries only?
Yeah, I mean, this whole aspect of herbal liver injury is actually not something new. It's not something that I have actually discovered the first in the world. Nothing like that. It's actually very well known because a lot of work has been done on traditional Chinese medicine (TCM). And that is where we have a lot of data on how herbs can be harmful to the liver and other organ systems. So if you look at the Chinese traditional Chinese medicine data, which has been there for decades, we can actually see that they have very systematically identified very toxic herbs, potentially toxic herbs, and safe herbs and things like that in their literature. And on this background, when I started actually working about 5 years back in my clinic, and I saw a lot of patients with acute hepatitis for which there were no causes, no reasons for their acute hepatitis. So they had jaundice and they had abnormal liver test, but no reason for it. So we actually look at all the common causes first. So we look at hepatitis A, hepatitis E, hepatitis B. We look at other rare viruses. We look at prescription drugs because that is number one cause. A lot of the drugs that we use in modern medical practice, such as old world painkillers like diclofenac, antibiotics, some antibiotics, anti-epileptics, which we use for seizures. These are all liver toxic. So when we looked at all of this, and all of these were actually absent in these patients, that is when we looked into the clinical history much deeper and identified that most of these patients, not most, all of these patients that we identified were actually using Ayurvedic herbal medicines for some other reason. No, not the liver disease per se, but for diabetes, weight loss, improving appetite, putting on weight, for athletic training, and all that stuff. So these patients, the moment they started these herbs, or a multitude of herbs, within few days to few weeks to few months, most of them started developing this liver injury. So this is when we identified that herbs are actually a major cause for acute hepatitis of unknown reason, and this is what we published in 2018. And very interestingly, when I look back at that paper where we looked at 34 patients and we analyzed more than 80 samples, it was actually very interesting because in this particular aspect of Giloy, the recent hot news is Giloy causing liver injury. When I look at that sample, you can actually see that most of these patients, the commonest herb that they consumed was actually Giloy. And in my patients, when we looked at the liver biopsy, because all the patients that I have published on had a liver biopsy. And the liver biopsy patterns were actually autoimmune kind of a liver injury pattern, autoimmune. And this is exactly what the new publication is also showing. So this was actually known before. And I mean, this particular paper that I published in 2018 was actually the one to show that autoimmune liver injury can happen with Tinospora cordifolia, which is actually what we call as Giloy. And this is actually a good replicated study because everybody was thinking, I am the only guy working against Ayurveda and doing all this herbal stuff against Ayurveda. It is not like that. And I welcome this study because other groups have also started identifying what I have been, seeing in the last few years.
Okay, good to know. So, doctor, do you want to take the questions directly, or do you want to explain few things before we go into the question answer session?
Yeah, so I think I should clear a few things about drug-induced liver injury because a lot of people, I mean, when I interact with people on Twitter, especially the ones who are, pro Ayush or whatever you can call them, they don't seem to understand the whole aspect of drug-induced liver injury. So I would just like to make a few points on that, and then we can maybe go ahead.
Please start.
Yeah. So, see, I mean, first and foremost, drug-induced liver injury is actually something we diagnose by exclusion. I mean, this is very important. So, a lot of people have been asking me, how do you know that this is exactly this Ayurvedic herbal that has caused the liver injury? How do you know it for sure? So, how do we know it for sure is because we have actually ruled out all the other causes that we know about. That is how we diagnose. So, when somebody comes with jaundice or hepatitis, we look at hepatitis A. Hepatitis A is very common in Kerala. Hepatitis B is very common in the north. And hepatitis E is very common in the north. So we rule out such common causes first, and step by step we come to a conclusion or an identification of a potential drug that has caused it. Now it may be a modern medicine drug or it may be a herbal drug also. And what we do is, if possible, we actually do a liver biopsy because liver biopsy is not actually definitely needed to confirm drug-induced liver injury. You just need to have a clinical correlation and exclusion of other known causes. And once that happens, so we have this RUCAM scoring. It's a very simple tool that we used in the that we use in the clinic, where we identify drug-induced liver injury into no drug-induced liver injury, possible, probable, or definite. So no means, there are other causes coming in, so it's definitely not drug-induced liver injury. Possible means, patient has been on other drugs which can actually cause some liver injury. Along with that, he's taking these herbs, so it's a mix of both. So it's possible. Probable is like, you have almost sure that it is this particular herb because other causes are almost ruled out. And definite, so to call it definite, what we have to do is we have to re-challenge this patient with the particular herb that you thought actually caused the liver injury. So for example, if you take Giloy, somebody has taken Giloy and developed jaundice, and you stop Giloy and the jaundice goes away, and then you give him Giloy again, and then he develops jaundice again. So that is confirmatory, that is definite. But we don't actually do that in clinical practice because some patients can actually develop a much more severe liver injury in the second and the third attempt. So we don't, we don't harm the patients that way. So a probable liver injury is good for us to confirm that, this is the reason why the liver injury has happened. And probable herbal liver injury is a very good benchmark for us to say that yes, drug-induced liver injury has happened because of that herb. So this is how we diagnose drug-induced liver injury, and it is very important for people to know. Second question is that a lot of them ask me that, already he has some liver disease. So how do you know that liver disease is what has actually gone bad and it is not the herb? So this is also important because it doesn't mean that, somebody already has a cirrhosis or a chronic liver disease and the herb is not the culprit. Herb is can definitely be the culprit because he has a stable chronic liver disease and suddenly it becomes bad. It is because of the herb. So the herbs can also cause liver injury in an already bad liver. So this is also very well known. So in such patients, the outcomes are much worse because they already have a bad liver. And then on top of that, you get a herb-induced liver injury, and they can have a very progressive and a very fast-moving liver failure that can actually end up in liver transplantation. So this is what I have mentioned in my second and third studies, where I have actually shown that patients with alcoholic liver disease, when they consume herbs for their alcoholic liver disease, the chance of them surviving at 6 months is only 18%. And that's quite bad. So this is what happens when a herb-induced liver injury happens on an already bad liver. So these 2 points I would like to clarify with the crowd here. And then I think we can move on with the questions.
Okay, so doctor, I would like to clarify a few things. Like I would like you to explain because we will be using these terms. First thing is what are double-blinded trials? Because people must not be knowing about it.
Yeah, so I mean, when we talk about a particular drug that we are going to look for efficacy, effectiveness then the best benchmark to identify that effectiveness is actually a double-blind controlled trial. So double-blind means that the particular person who investigates the drug does not know that if the patient is receiving the drug or a placebo. So we have a control. The control is a placebo. So for example, I'm going to check for improvement in fever in a group of 10 patients. So I give 5 patients the paracetamol, and I give another 5 patients, just a sugar pill. And I have to know that which of this is actually improving the fever better, if it's the sugar pill or the paracetamol. But I don't know which patient is getting what. So that is one of the blinding. The double blind means even the patient does not know what he is getting. So the investigator does not know and the patient does not know. So there is no bias there. It is completely randomized. So that is randomized double blind. Now there is a triple blind also, and that is the ultimate. A triple blind means the person who is actually analyzing the data also does not know which patient or who has received what placebo and which patient has received the drug. So that is the ultimate, and it is very difficult for us to actually do a triple blind trial. I mean, unless and until we have a very good setup for it. In India, it's almost impossible. And this is how we go about analyzing the effectiveness of a drug by using a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial, and this is a gold standard. And if there is no RCT done, that means the evidence that is generated is actually quite weak. I mean, you can generate evidence at multiple levels, but RCT is actually one of the best evidences that we can look up to, because it actually gives the chance for somebody to get better even without the drug, and we can identify that. So if, for example, a group of patients improve with a particular drug compared to the placebo or the sugar pill, we can very confidently say that this drug is actually effective. So that is what is important to identify effectiveness, and this is what is RCT.
Okay, one more thing I would like you to cover: why personal experience are not recorded as the effectiveness of drug. Because people have been saying here, like my grandparents have been taking this herb, my parents are taking, I am taking, nothing has happened. So that means it is effective. Why don't we count a personal experience into this effectiveness? Doctor, your mic is on mute.
Yeah, so the personal experience means it is an anecdotal experience. So anecdote is actually a factual claim, because the person who has actually felt it, experienced it, has actually felt it right. So that is factually correct. But relying only on that observation and then generalizing it to the whole of a particular group. For example, I have allergic cough, and I take homeopathy, and within 5 days my cough is gone. I cannot explain why my cough is gone, but my cough is gone, and this is my experience. So I go and tell 100 people that I took this homeopathy and my cough is gone. That is wrong, because I am generalizing my experience, and I am biased because I rely on my own cherry picked representation of that particular outcome. And this is why we never look at experiences or personal anecdotes as evidence. Now one can actually say that we have found, I can actually say that this homeopathy drug I have taken and my allergic cough is gone. Then I can actually test it, because then it becomes a hypothesis. I can actually give this homeopathy medicine to 10 people and no medicine to 10 people. And if the 10 people who has received the homeopathy medicine actually has improvement in symptoms vis-a-vis the other group who has no symptoms, then I can say, yes, this homeopathy medicine has worked. But if the 10 people who has taken the homeopathy medicine and the 10 people who did not take the homeopathy medicine all have improvement in symptoms, that means that homeopathy medicine did not work. So that is why we have to rely on evidence generation through a method and not on personal experiences.
Okay, I'll take some questions now, and then we'll take a explanation session in between again. I'm adding this Sagar Rana guy. Hi Sagar, you can ask your question.
Thank you, Chirag ji. So you always tell that there are no side effects of whey protein, but there are few studies which claim that there are side effects of it. So there is a one study by Dr. Bassam Farzo, so who is an
Sagar, listen to me. Can you please read the topic again on the written over?
okay,
We are
okay. So my
discussing the.
question was only related to this. I
No,
have no
we
question
already,
on.
we are already discussed about the way with the same doctor.
Okay. So
Yeah.
liver, so I have also question on liver. So there is a one study of NIH which claims that usage of whey protein may cause liver damage via inflammatory and apoptotic responses. So the result showed.
Sagar, you are on mute. Can you please unmute yourself? Yeah,
So
please
there is
continue.
a study of NIH which claims that usage of whey protein may cause liver damage via inflammatory and apoptotic responses. So the results showed that when whey protein is used in an ununiform manner and without exercising, adverse effect on the liver may occur by increasing the apoptotic signal in the short term and increasing inflammatory marker and hepatotoxicity in the long term.
Doctor, you can take this.
Sagar, are you looking at the study by Gurgen et al. 2015?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, first of all, that study is actually in rats, Sagar. It is a rat study. They have done this whey protein supplementation study in 30 rats. So what we have to do is, even though rats are living animals, we don't actually consider rat physiology to be exactly the same as human physiology. So a whey protein leading to liver injury or hepatocyte, what we call as a liver cell through apoptosis or any inflammatory pathway has not been demonstrated in humans until now. and we have very good meta-analysis and systematic reviews of whey protein supplementation in multiple groups of people, which has shown that it is safe in the short term and intermediate term consumption. There is no issues with it. So I mean, it's very. I mean, that's a good study that you have brought out, but we cannot actually extrapolate that study to humans. It's a rat study.
Good evening, everyone. This is Syed here. First of all, big thank you to Dr. Sirek. I have been following his work, and he's a treat to for all those interested in academics, and also those are interested in gut and liver. Sir, I had a specific question. During my training, I get many patients with DILI who just come with a unlabeled packet of powders, and they call in here in northern India they call that as churans, and we cannot exactly trace the constituents, even the Ayurvedic constituents of such elements which are present in those churans. In your experience, have you come across daily cases of similar nature? And if you have come across, how do you go about implicating that particular element in implication of delay? Is there any experience in that?
Yeah, hi, Syed. Yes, I mean, this is a very important question. And if you actually see the main paper that I have published, most
Sir.
of the patients who actually developed a worse DILI was actually because of these unlabeled and mislabeled packets of herbal products, mostly powders and tablets and pills of different colors, no labels, nothing. And most of them are actually given by traditional healers. They may not be actually Ayurveda trained, not degree holders in Ayurveda, but they are actually traditional healers, and they prepare this in their homes or whatever places they prepare it in bulk, and that is what they give. Now, what happens is that we actually don't have any clue about what this contains. I mean, offhand. But what we can do is we can identify inorganic and organic and heavy metal components of this particular unlabeled product using a good number of new technologies. What I use is something known as ICP-MS or OES and GC-MS, gas chromatography. So we can identify components in it, but we cannot identify what exactly was used. Now, if you want to actually know which plant or herb was used, DNA barcoding. So using DNA barcoding, we can identify the herb and submit to a database that has already been prepared. So this is one way, but purely for research purposes, because it is going to be very expensive. So we can identify components. There are very good tools on it. But when I analyze such products, what I found out was that it was mostly contamination, adulteration, and a lot of pesticides come and caused the liver injury in such instances.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sagar, you got your answer?
Yeah, I got my answer, but there are few more studies which claims that whey protein damages and accelerate hair
So
loss.
Sagar, we'll keep a separate space for the whey protein again. Then you can discuss about it. Do you have any question about the Giloy and Ayurvedic drugs?
No, I don't have. I have specific
Okay.
question about whey protein.
Vaibhav, you can ask your question.
हेलो, कैन यू हियर मी?
Yeah, Vaibhav. Yes, we can hear you.
हाँ, तो अभी जैसे गिलोय और उसका आयुर्वेदिक ड्रग्स का जो है तो यानी मैं यहाँ पे ग्राउंड पोजीशन बताना चाहता हूँ, जैसे कि अभी ये सेकेंड वेव या फर्स्ट वेव में यहाँ पे यानी हम लोग के मैं यहाँ गुजरात से हूँ, यहाँ मुंबई से हूँ, तो यहाँ पे लोगों ने बहुत ही ज़्यादा यानी गिलोय और आयुर्वेदिक मेडिसिन का यूज़ किया हुआ है। ऐसा अभी यानी प्रिस्क्राइब भी किया है, अनप्रिस्क्राइब, या किसी ने बोल दिया कि हाँ भाई आप ले लो करके, यानी मैंने भी खुद लिया हुआ है गिलोय ऐसा। और मोस्टली सभी जो है यानी मेरे ख्याल से लैक्स ऑफ पीपल यूज गिलोय, लैक्स ऑफ पीपल ने गिलोय का यूज़ किया हुआ है। तो अभी उसमें से कुछ लोगों को जॉन्डिस डेवलप हुआ है, तो वो परसेंटेज वाइज आप बोलो तो बहुत कम मेरे को लग रहा है ऐसा। वैसे मैं कोई वो आयुष या प्रो आयुष या ऐसा कुछ नहीं हूँ, लेकिन मेरा ये क्वेश्चन है कि अगर इतने सारे लोगों ने यूज़ किया और उसमें से कुछ लोगों को जॉन्डिस हुआ है, तो ऐसा सेम प्रॉब्लम तो रेमडेसिविर वगैरह में भी हुआ है सबको।
ठीक है, आपका क्वेश्चन बहुत ही अच्छा है। मैं जस्ट उनका स्पेस क्रैश हो गया, ही इज जॉइनिंग अगेन, जस्ट वेट फॉर अ मिनट।
हाँ, तो यानी आयुर्वेदिक से बहुत सारे, और अभी जो गुजरात में जो सेकेंड वेव था, तो वहाँ पे जैसे ऑफिशियली तो डेटा बहुत कम दिखा रहा है, लेकिन अनऑफिशियली बहुत ही लोगों को ये हुआ था, यानी कोविड। और उस सिचुएशन में गिलो मेरे ख्याल से सब लोगों ने लिया होगा ना, एज फार एज माई नॉलेज गोज। तो
ओके,
हाँ,
आई एम जस्ट वेटिंग फॉर हिम टू।
Like to add a point, if you allow me, Chirag.
या प्लीज ऐड।
Actually, actually, not a battle between an Ayurveda or an allopathy. Basically, in the larger sense, it is about the understanding of evidence-based and non-evidence-based modalities of treatment. I think to all the members in this space right now, I would like to say that the era is of evidence-based medicine. To be frank, I will be frankly, accept Ayurvedic drug if they show a very good response in a randomized control trial. I can claim that. So it is not about Ayurveda or allopathy. It is a battle between the evidence-based medicine and non-evidence-based medicine.
Yeah, true. Dr. Phillips,
Yeah,
so
I'm here.
you got the Weber's question?
Yes, yeah, I got the question.
Okay, please answer.
Yeah, so basically, Vaibhav was saying that a lot of people have used Giloy, and only a small number of people have been identified as getting liver injury because of Giloy. That was a question, right?
Yeah.
And so, why should we actually demonize the whole of Giloy? Now, two important things. One is that we actually don't know the incidence of liver injury due to Giloy, because we don't have any quality randomized safety trials to assess the liver injury potential of Giloy or any other injury potential of Giloy. Now, what we identified is actually some observation. Now, everybody, I mean, for example, if I can say that, in India, thousands, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people drink alcohol, but not everybody gets cirrhosis. Not everybody gets alcoholic cirrhosis. Why? Does that mean that a lot of people are not having cirrhosis? Does that mean we should promote alcoholism? No. That is the reason why we should not promote Giloy also, because some people are prone to developing the liver injury. Now we have to identify through scientific methods who are those people. Now, because Giloy injury is actually not a dose dependent injury, which means that you take an example of a modern medicine drug like paracetamol. If you go beyond a particular dose only, you will get a liver injury. If you take in the recommended dose, it's safe, it is fine. But there are certain other drugs like diclofenac or nimesulide, which you take a single dose, it can actually completely damage your kidneys and cause liver failure and jaundice and all that. So Giloy comes into that category. This is known as idiosyncratic drug reaction. Idiosyncratic, which means even a small dose can actually cause liver injury. Now imagine 1,000 people take Giloy and 20 of them develop a liver injury. Now you extrapolate that 1,000 to 20,000. So imagine the number of people developing liver injury in the long term, of people continuously using Giloy because they feel it is safe. So that is why I say, even if it is a small number, it is an important number, because ultimately what we want is not to harm the general population. Now, if the benefit of Giloy is much, much, much more than its risk, fine, we can take that risk. But we don't know the benefits, number one, because there are no studies to show there is any benefit of Giloy. Plus, now you're identifying side effect. So why do you want to take a drug or a herb which can actually cause harm and without any identified benefits? So this is the reason why the studies are important for us to actually move forward and identify better so that we can improve public health.
Vaibhav, do you want to respond to this?
thank you, sir.
Tenrans, please ask your question.
Yeah, hi. So I just wanted to ask, like, when you say it's harmful to the liver, Giloy, because you know how it happens, you know, your moms, all these Himalayan butties that they have. Now, so we've been put on Amalaki and Ashwagandha and Guduchi, which is Giloy and all that. So I just wanted to know, I mean, is there any specific combination which is more harmful than than Giloy on its own? Also, if you're a drink, if you're into onto alcohol, is there like a specific combination which is even more lethal or like harmful, something like that? Has it come to the fore? Would you know?
Yeah, I mean, speaking specifically from herb point of view, if you look at the herb-induced liver injuries published, I mean, not from my side or not from India, but from the Europe and the US,
Yeah.
multi-herbal products have always been more dangerous than single herb.
Yeah.
For example, you take the example of some product like Live 52, or no, I'm just giving an example, Live 52 or
Sure.
Coronel per se. Now,
Sure.
these are multi-herbal products. It contains more than 20 herbs or 5 or 6 herbs. It's not a single herb. So
Right.
what happens with liver injury is that there is something known as herb to herb interaction. There
Sure.
is something known as herb to drug interaction, which
Okay.
actually can lead to development of a toxic metabolite inside the human body, which can harm the person. So definitely, Giloy per se can be directly a toxic herb to the liver, or Giloy along with another herb can actually produce a much more toxic metabolite that can be more toxic to the liver. So this is how the things work. So it's not very simple when you say that, you know, you take this kashaya, you take this churna, and you're fine. No, because the churna has multiple ingredients which can actually cause more harm than a single ingredient. So this is the whole aspect of Ayurvedic medicines, because you don't see a single herb Ayurvedic medicine. It is always multi-herbal, which is
Okay.
actually quite mysterious and more harmful, if you ask me, without the
Okay.
right testing for safety.
No, but then also, like, this was herb to herb, but then also putting together, like, if you've been put on Giloy for certain reasons, certain ailments, is it like necessary? Does it conflict with taking alcohol? Like, we're supposed to stop alcohol, refrain from alcohol in the meantime. Something, would you know?
So I mean, nobody has done a study on herb intake and alcoholism, but I would definitely say no alcohol in any sense, because I'm a liver doctor, and I would say no alcohol at all. I mean, with or without any herbs.
So with, I understand, but specifically, do you have increased? I mean, would there be any data? Would anything you would have heard or read? I mean, does it increase the dangers, like, you know, of the liver issues?
I mean, logically speaking, yes, it would, because you have a lot of toxins and metabolites coming, and along with that, you have acetaldehyde and formaldehyde, everything coming from alcohol. It could potentially harm, yes, 100%. Because
Right.
I can say this from my own experience and published work, that patients with alcoholic liver disease who took herbal medicines had a much worse outcome compared to the ones who were not on herbal medicines. Now, this paper is actually published in Journal of Clinical and Translational Hepatology in 2019. A group of alcoholic disease patients who took herbs, and they had much worse outcomes than those who not taking herbs. So I think your hypothesis might be true.
Okay. So then no Giloy while taking alcohol. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, priest,
Or
you can
no
ask.
alcohol and no giloy, both.
Sorry, sir. Can't say yes to both. I can only say yes to one. Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Priest, you can ask your question.
हेलो
Yeah, we can hear you.
फिलिप सर, मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है कि आपने जो आर्टिकल लिखा था कि 6 पेशेंट्स थे, उनको लीवर की प्रॉब्लम्स हो गई ये गिलोय लेने की वजह से। पतंजलि का मार्केट है, उसमें 2 करोड़ के समथिंग कस्टमर है जो कंटिन्यूअसली उनके प्रोडक्ट यूज़ करते हैं। उनमें गिलोय जूस भी है, आंवला जूस भी है, एलोवेरा जूस भी है, और अभी आप बोल रहे थे कि मिक्स्ड इंग्रेडिएंट्स में भी वो आते हैं, जो इनकी वट्टी आती है, अश्वगंधा वट्टी वगैरह ये सब है, या कोरोनिल वगैरह है। कोरोनिल अराउंड 2 करोड़ लोगों ने, जो इनका मार्केट है उसमें 2 करोड़ लोगों ने कोरोनिल ली थी। 2 करोड़ में से अगर 6 पेशेंट आते हैं, उनमें भी आप कह रहे हो कि सिर्फ ऑब्जर्वेशन है, कोई स्टडी नहीं है, हमने ऑब्जर्व किया है कि उनके 6 लोगों को लीवर की प्रॉब्लम हुई है। तो 2 करोड़ लोगों में 6 को सिर्फ ऑब्जर्वेशन की बेसिस पे आप कह रहे हो कि गिलोय इज फेक, गिलोय बंद करो, गिलोय को मार्केट से हटा दो, ये क्यों है?
Priest, I mean, I don't know your actual name, but
सर
what we look at from the study is that हमने ये नहीं बोला है कि हमें गिलोय को बंद करना है, पतंजलि को बंद करना है।
पतंजलि को बंद नहीं करना,
हमने ये बोला है कि गिलोय में और ज्यादा हमें स्टडीज चाहिए। स्टडीज चाहिए कि उसका क्या बेनिफिट है, उसमें क्या सेफ्टी का क्या मार्जिन होता है, ये सब हमें स्टडीज करना
सर
है।
पतंजलि ने स्टडी
और
की आपने पढ़ी?
कौन सी?
पतंजलि ने उन्होंने उनकी लेब है, उन्होंने स्टडीज पब्लिश की है, उसके बाद ही दवाइयाँ होती है, वो आपको शायद पता होगा कि क्लियरेंस उनको मिलता है। डायरेक्ट हम सेल नहीं कर सकते मार्केट में कि टमाटर है ले लो आप, हम खेत से लेके आए। दवाइयाँ मार्केट में
पतंजलि का जो स्टडी है आपने पढ़ा है? पतंजलि का स्टडी है वो बिल्कुल फेक स्टडी है, वो फेकू वाला स्टडी है,
आप भी फेक
बिल्कुल फ्रॉड स्टडी है। उसमें बहुत सारा कमेंट्स भी आ गया है बाकी लोगों से, बाकी साइंटिस्ट से। उसमें कुछ है नहीं।
कौन से साइंटिस्ट?
उन्होंने जिन पेशेंट्स में कोई सिम्टम्स है नहीं उसको कोरोनल दिया है, उसमें क्या फायदा है?
सर
उसमें कुछ देना नहीं है।
कौन से साइंटिस्ट ने कहा कि उनकी स्टडी फेक है?
अरे आप ना कोरोनल स्टडी जो है उसके उधर पबमेड में जाके क्लिक करो, पपियर कमेंट्स होता है, उसमें साइंटिस्ट का पूरा नाम है।
आप जैसे डॉक्टर्स होते हैं वो कहते हैं फेकू है, इसको दे दी उसको दे दी। आप साइंटिस्ट का नाम बताओ, आपने स्टडीज पढ़ी है?
आप ये बताओ कि कोरोनल में क्या फायदा है?
सर
प्लीज आई थिंक डॉक्टर कह रहे हैं आपको कि आप पबमेड पे जाकर साइंटिस्ट के नाम पढ़ सकते हो, वहां पे लिखा हुआ है सारे कमेंट्स।
चिराग में
प्रोफेसर एक साइंटिस्ट का मैं नाम बोल देता हूँ।
सर
वो वर्ल्ड का सबसे पहला कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री ऑल्टरनेटिव मेडिसिन प्रोफेसर है, उसका नाम है प्रोफेसर एडजार्ड अर्नस्ट। आप उसके ट्विटर हैंडल में जाके देख सकते हैं।
बात सुन लीजिए, आप बोल रहे थे कि 2 करोड़ लोगों को उन्होंने सिम्टम्स नहीं थे। हम कोविड की बात नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम कह रहे हैं कि 2 करोड़ लोगों ने कोरोना ली है, उन्होंने 2 करोड़ लोगों ने डायरेक्ट गिलोय को कंज्यूम किया है और मिक्स्ड इंग्रेडिएंट के साथ किया है, जिसमें अश्वगंधा भी है, गिलोय भी और हजारों तरीके की अलग अलग चीजें हैं। उनका लिवर डैमेज हुआ या नहीं हुआ?
तो अश्वगंधा भी लिवर के लिए अच्छा नहीं है, गिलोय भी अच्छा नहीं है, एलोवेरा भी अच्छा नहीं है। इन सब एक साथ खाने से ना लिवर एकदम खराब हो जाता है भाई।
स्टडी पे बैठ के बोल दिया कि खराब है, क्या स्टडी?
नहीं, बैठने के नहीं बोल रहा हूँ, उसमें तो है, पब्लिश्ड वर्क्स हैं, आप जाके देख सकते हैं।
सर वर्क में तो यही था कि चारकोल लेना गलत है, दातुन मत करिए इससे, कोलगेट के अंदर
ऑब्जर्वेशन है ना भाई, ऑब्जर्वेशन है ना, इसके और ऊपर स्टडीज हो जाएगा। आप थोड़ा वेट कर लीजिए।
आप जैसे डॉक्टर्स कहते हैं कि चारकोल वाला कोलगेट यूज करिए, आप कहते हैं कि लौंग खराब है तुम्हारे दांतों के लिए, कोलगेट में डाल।
अरे भाई, तो बाबा रामदेव ने जीन्स भी बेचे हैं, तो ऐसा नहीं है कि कौन किसको एडवर्टाइज कर रहा है, वो अलग बात है। जो डॉक्टर कोलगेट की एड में आते होंगे वो अलग बात है।
बात ये है कि
आप क्या कर रहे हैं प्रीस्ट, मेरी बात सुन लीजिए, आप क्या कर रहे हैं ना, आप ये टॉपिक को आप एलोपैथी और आयुष की वर्सेस वापस से
नहीं
लेके
है
जा
मैम,
रहे हैं।
ये नहीं है। क्वेश्चन ये था कि इन्होंने कहा कि आर्टिकल लिखा कि गिलोय फेक है।
हाँ, तो मेरी बात सुन लीजिए, अभी आप अगर गिलोय की बात कर रहे हैं,
फेक नहीं है, गिलोय अनसेफ है।
हाँ, सेफ, आई स्टैंड बाय यू डॉक्टर। अगर आप बोल रहे हैं कि 2 करोड़ लोगों ने कोरोनिल लिया, 2 करोड़ लोग अभी तक लिवर डैमेज के बिना कैसे घूम रहे हैं बाहर। एक चीज, हाइड्रोक्सीक्लोरोक्विन जैसी एक टैबलेट ले लो जो मलेरिया के लिए दी जाती है, रिफैम्पिसिन जैसी एक टैबलेट ले लो जो टीबी के लिए दी जाती है। 2 करोड़ लोगों से भी ज्यादा लोगों को हम लोगों ने रिफैम्पिसिन दी है, डिस्पाइट द फैक्ट दैट वी नो कि वो कभी कभी लिवर में प्रॉब्लम्स कर सकता है। लेकिन हम क्यों प्रिस्क्राइब करते हैं? क्योंकि हमको पता है कि रिफैम्पिसिन का क्या इफेक्ट पॉसिबल हो सकता है, और अगर ये हुआ तो हम कौन सी टेस्ट से उसको डिटेक्ट कर पाएंगे, उसको सही कैसे कर पाएंगे। आयुर्वेद ने हमको रिसर्च दिया नहीं है, आयुर्वेदिक डॉक्टर्स ने, मेरी बात सुन लीजिए, आयुर्वेद ने, हम सुनने को तैयार है कि आप गाइनैक प्रॉब्लम्स, आप कैंसर, आप जो स्किन कंडीशंस है जो हमारे पास अभी तक इलाज 100% नहीं आया है, आप हेल्प कीजिए। लेकिन ऐसे उठ के मत बोल दीजिए कि एक ये जड़ी बूटी आप खाओ, इसका साइड इफेक्ट हमको पता नहीं है, इसका इलाज करने के लिए हम एलोपैथी डॉक्टर के पास भेज देंगे।
आंसर कर दीजिए। आयुर्वेद ने अपनी स्टडीज पब्लिश किया, आपने उठा के बोल दिया ये फेक है। आप
भाई आप ना, आपको ट्रायल का तो एक तो रिसर्च का मतलब आपको पता नहीं है जो डॉक्टर
आपको पता है।
पहले तो आप बोल दीजिए कि अगर कोरोनिल ने वेबसाइट पे पब्लिश कर दिया है उसको रिसर्च नहीं मानते
तो आप रिसर्च
उसका एक स्ट्रेटेजी होता है, तरीका होता है किसी भी चीज को रिसर्च और स्टडीज बोलने का। रैंडमाइज्ड कंट्रोल ट्रायल्स होती है, बहुत सारे डिफरेंट, ये डॉक्टर
आयुर्वेद
प्रीस्ट आप यू आर अपीलिंग टू इमोशंस नहीं है। आराम से रहो भाई, आराम से लॉजिकल फैलेसी हो रहा है इधर।
प्रीस्ट लिसन, एक काम करते हैं, 1 सेकंड सुनिए आप। अभी ये स्पेस लगेगा, आधा घंटा और रहेगा आपके पास। जो भी स्टडी आप ट्वीट कर दीजिए, मैं शेयर करता हूँ इधर। वी विल डिसेक्ट द स्टडी
सर
राइट नाउ।
स्टडीज करनी है। आप कहते हो आयुर्वेद फेक है, उनके पास रिसोर्सेज नहीं है।
अरे नहीं, हम नहीं बोल रहे आयुर्वेद
अरे
फेक है
अरे
भाई,
कोई नहीं बोल
आयुर्वेद
रहा
में
अरे
फेक
बहुत
है।
बहुत
किसने बोला
नॉलेज है।
आयुर्वेद फेक है? मैंने बोला कोरोनिल फेक है भाई। कोरोनिल तो फेक है, कोरोनिल आयुर्वेद नहीं है, थोड़ी है।
सर
हम फेक नहीं बोल रहे।
पॉइंट
कोई फेक नहीं बोल रहा
कोरोनिल
है मेरे
आयुर्वेद
को।
नहीं है प्रीस्ट। कोरोनिल एक प्राइवेट कंपनी का प्रोडक्ट है, वो आयुर्वेद नहीं है। बाबा रामदेव आयुर्वेद नहीं है,
सर उसमें
वो
गिलोय,
बिजनेसमैन है।
उसमें गिलोय है, और पिछले 5000 सालों से इंडिया गिलोय लेता हुआ
अरे
है,
यार,
जिनको कुछ भी नहीं पता, जिनके पास
तो
में
शायद अभी पता चल रहा है तो अच्छी
नहीं,
बात है
ना
ना।
तो
हमको
उनके पास
कोई स्टडी कर रहा
कोरोना
है गिलोय को और पता चल रहा है उसके बारे में, तो आपको नॉलेज से क्या दिक्कत है?
नॉलेज से मुझे ये दिक्कत
आपको
है कि आप
साइंस से दिक्कत है।
मुझे
आपको चाहिए कि अगर 5000 साल से कोई कुछ ले रहा है तो अभी साइंस ने उसको पूछना नहीं चाहिए।
हाँ
ऐसे तो मॉडर्न मेडिसिन इवॉल्व ही नहीं करेगा ना।
मॉडर्न मेडिसिन इवॉल्व करेगा, लेकिन आप कह रहे हो कि
कैसे करेगा इवॉल्व?
छह
रिसर्च के बिना
केसेस।
कुछ भी चीज इवॉल्व
मेरा
नहीं करती
क्वेश्चन
है।
कल भी यही था, परसों भी यही था, आज भी है। आप बोल
अच्छा,
रहे हो
तुम
कि
रोज यही क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हो? कहाँ कहाँ पूछ रहे हो ये क्वेश्चन?
क्वेश्चन मैंने टाइमलाइन पे डाला है, चिराग को पता है।
अच्छा
और
अच्छा अच्छा।
मेरा क्वेश्चन यही है कि 2 करोड़ लोगों ने कोरोनिल लिया है, ठीक है, और उसके
अरे बाप
अलावा
रे।
इंडिया में 140 करोड़ है, उसमें बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो गिलोय कंज्यूम करते हुए आ रहे हैं और कंटिन्यूस करते हैं। चाय में पीते हैं उसको, पानी के साथ पीते हैं, उसके गरारे करते हैं, बहुत सारे तरीके से गिलोय को लेते हैं, उसकी वटी
ओके
भी लेते हैं।
ओके
उसमें से
ओके।
आप बोल रहे हो
प्रीस्ट
140
एक
करोड़
एक
लोगों
एक
ने।
एक क्वेश्चन ठीक है, मान लिया
हाँ,
कोरोनिल अच्छा है,
कोरोनिल
सेफ
नहीं
है,
है सर,
वो कोविड के लिए भी अच्छा है।
कितने गिलोय
तो
को
मुझे दिखा दो कहाँ रिकमेंडेड दिया है, कहाँ रिकमेंडेशन है, किसने बोला कोरोनिल खाओ?
कोरोनिल पे
रिकमेंडेशन कहाँ है भाई? अगर इतना अच्छा है इसका
आपने
जो इफेक्ट है, तो कहाँ रिकमेंडेशन है कोरोनिल लेने के
सर
लिए या गिलोय लेने के लिए?
गिलोय पे लिखा है आपने, मैं कह रहा हूँ कि कोरोनिल में भी गिलोय है, 2 करोड़ लोगों ने वो ले ली, और उसके
अरे बा
अलावा गिलोय।
अरे आप मुझे ये बताओ कि जो लोगों ने कोरोनिल लिया और जो लोगों ने गिलोय लिया, उन चलो 100 लोगों को हमने लिया, ठीक है, 100 लोग को रिसर्च में मैंने स्टडी में लिया, 100 लोगों को रोज मैंने गिलोय खिलाया, 100 लोगों को रोज मैंने कोरोनिल खिलाया। मेरे लिए इतना इनफ नहीं है कि वो जिंदा रहे वो गिलोय खाने के बाद या कोरोनिल खाने के बाद। मेरे लिए ये सही है कि ये जो ड्रग देने का जो पर्पस था, ये मेडिसिन देने का जो
मैम
पर्पस था, वो इंसान को वो
मैम
हुआ कि नहीं।
टॉपिक आप
पहले तो आप
आपने
मुझे
या
ये
तो
डेटा
आपने
बताइए कि
टॉपिक पढ़ा नहीं,
कोरोनिल ने किसी में
आपने
कोविड
टॉपिक
का
पढ़ा नहीं,
ट्रीटमेंट किया?
तो या आप आयुर्वेद में आ रहे हो, पतंजलि के अगेंस्ट आ रहे हो। टॉपिक ये था कि गिलोय,
नहीं नहीं, टॉपिक आप मैं पतंजलि के
मैं
अगेंस्ट अभी तो कुछ बोली ही नहीं।
यही था आज।
नहीं नहीं, एक मिनट, आई थिंक देयर इज अ कंफ्यूजन हियर। यहाँ पे
आप
कंफ्यूजन,
लेके आए
यहाँ पे
ब्रो।
कंफ्यूजन है, यहाँ पे कंफ्यूजन है। सुना नहीं शायद आपने, वो जो स्टडी थी ना जो पतंजलि ने पब्लिश की है, उस स्टडी में किसी को भी कोई भी लिवर इंजरी कुछ नहीं था। एवरीबॉडी वाज हेल्दी इंडिविजुअल। तो हेल्दी इंडिविजुअल को तो तुम पानी भी दे दोगे ना, कुछ नहीं होने वाला है। सिमिलरली उनको गिलोय दे दिया, कुछ नहीं हुआ उनको।
सर उनको
और उन्होंने उस चीज, एक मिनट, मैं एक बार खत्म कर देता हूँ, फिर तुमको मैं बात करने का स्पेस दे देता हूँ, ठीक है?
सर
तो
बात
उनको
ये है कि
एक
आप
मिनट मुझे खत्म करने दे सकते हो क्या? फिर तभी
प्लीज
तो
प्लीज
हम
एक
ये
बार एक एक को
डिस्कशन होगा,
खत्म
नहीं
करने
तो
दो।
कैसे है ना, पार्लियामेंट
20
जैसे
मिनट
हो
बोलो।
जाएगा, सब लोग
एक एक को
साथ में
बोलने
बात
दो।
करेंगे,
सब साथ में
तो हमको
हाँ
वो नहीं करना है।
बात कर
एक बात मुझे खत्म करने दो, एक बार मैं
कंट्रोल
खत्म
कंट्रोल
करूँ क्या?
हाँ करो।
या नचिकेत प्लीज
ओके
कंटिन्यू।
ओके, हाँ। तो उसमें ये था कि जिसको कुछ नहीं हुआ है ना, जो मेडिसिन पे नहीं होता ऐसे, जिसको कुछ नहीं हुआ है ना, उसको दे दिया और बोल दिया कि हाँ ये देखो इन्होंने कोरोना ये गिलोय ले लिया, तो हमारा जो ये प्रोडक्ट है ये सही काम कर रहा है। और ये था उनका स्टडी, वो अगर पढ़ लोगे ना तो उसमें वैसा है। ऐसे नहीं कभी भी किसी भी मेडिसिन को, अगर किसी चीज को एज अ मेडिसिन तुम प्रोड्यूस करते हो ना मार्केट में, तो ऐसे नहीं उसको पब्लिश करते हैं। तो यहाँ पे बस उसके बेसिस पे इसको मार्केट कर रहे हैं कि इसका स्टडी पब्लिश्ड है, ये काम करता है, ये देखो इतने लोगों को दिया है, इसमें से किसी को कुछ नहीं हुआ है। तो इसके बेसिस पे एक दो चीजें आती हैं। इसके बेसिस पे हम ये नहीं कह सकते हैं कि गिलोय वर्क करता है या नहीं करता है, क्योंकि जिनको दिया है उनको वैसे ही कुछ नहीं था। वो मतलब तुमने और मैंने बैठ के दारू पी लिया ना, और हमको लिवर का कोई इंजुरी नहीं हुआ, तो हम ऐसा कंक्लूड कर रहे हैं कि दारू पीने से लिवर को कुछ नहीं होता है, जो गलत है। जो हम आई थिंक हम दोनों यहाँ पे अग्री कर सकते हैं। मेडिसिन को अगर तुम एज अ क्योर बाहर ला रहे हो ना, प्रोडक्ट एज अ प्रोडक्ट ला रहे हो ना, ये ऐसा नहीं है कि मतलब ये हम कोको कोला पीते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है कि कोको कोला पी लिया कुछ नहीं हुआ है तो चलो इसको मास में प्रोड्यूस करते हैं। ये मेडिसिन है, दिस इज गिवन एज अ क्या कहते हैं, क्योर। तो इसको एज अ क्योर देना है ना, तो उस हिसाब से उसको क्योर की तरह ही उसको स्टडी करना पड़ता है। तो वो स्टडी तो हुआ नहीं। तो जो वो डॉक्टर एबी कह रहे थे, उन्होंने वो इसलिए उस स्टडी को फेक बोला क्योंकि इसमें क्योर का तो किसी ने बात ही नहीं किया है। इसमें सिर्फ ये है कि चलो 4 लोग मिलके दारू पी लेते, अरे लिवर को तो कुछ नहीं हुआ, अब ये काम करता है। ओके, अब तुम बताओ।
उनका स्पेस क्रैश हो गया शायद। एनीवे, गुलरोज जी आप बोलिए।
Yes, hi. Good evening, everyone.
या प्लीज
Well,
कंटिन्यू।
sir, I have two questions to Dr. Abby Phillips, sir. My first question is that most of the people taking these like Ayurvedic drugs and homeopathic drugs, their minds works basis on actually on anecdotal evidence and all that you have explained. So my question means like people on actually lower strata are mostly dependent on this. Like they heard someone that this doctor is good or this medicine is good, they start taking it. So how to actually convince them factually that this is wrong? That's my first question, which I have been thinking a lot about these days. And my second question is that as you are actually a hepatologist, so it is obvious that you have experience in what the effect of these xenobiotics and all these drugs like herbal drugs have on liver. Liver is actually or we can say a metabolism controlling organ. So it is obvious that it would be first line of defense for all these drugs. My question on this is there any other organ or organ system which is heavily affected by these drugs? That's nothing other than that. Thank you.
Yeah, but thank you, Gulrose. So your first question is, how do we actually discuss with somebody who brings in anecdotes and make them be more aware of what they're actually promoting is actually not scientific. Now, this is very difficult. This is very difficult because anecdote means a personal experience. So somebody who has a personal experience actually believes in that, and it's actually a bias. It's actually a bias, but it is not a true bias. It's not a true fact that it actually works or not. It's a bias. Now the problem is that, and this is actually very commonly seen with homeopathy, not Ayurveda, but with homeopathy, because homeopathy people actually treat patients with diseases that are mostly self-limiting or diseases which actually have very mild symptoms that would go away within a few months or a few years, and they take homeopathy for a long time and then they say, I know, it's all done. Now there are a lot of diseases which actually do not require treatment and you just give it time. Now this is one way we can tell people, a disease like, for example, allergic rhinitis. You have a nasal congestion, allergies when you're in your childhood, and then once you grow out of it, maybe when you're 8 years of age or 10 years of age, you're fine. So there are diseases which are actually age dependent and it will go away. So using the term self-limiting actually helps. So you can make them understand by saying that, this disease actually would go away without even this drug or even without this herb. And they understand it plain simply.
Sorry to interrupt on this, but when I actually say this to a patient or someone, they think that I am trying to sway away them from whatever they are taking. That's what my question is.
I mean, see, you cannot change everyone, but if you say this to 10 people, if 2 of them out of 10 hear you out, I think that's a big win for you. And the second question is that what about other organs? Very important. And I'm not sure if we have nephrologists here, because I think one of the most important organs to be affected by herbal drugs is the kidney. And we have a lot of data from India also. Professor Jha is one of the most important persons working on it, where he has actually published a lot of data on herbal medicines causing something known as interstitial nephritis, where it damages the kidneys, and some patients actually develop chronic kidney disease because of herbal drug use. And most of this is because of heavy metal toxicity. And liver and kidneys are the most affected. And we also have a lot of publications on herbal medicines causing bone marrow failure, where patients actually come with severe anemia, low platelet count, low total counts. And this is very commonly seen with those patients who have taken herbal drugs for cancers. Because herbal drugs is one of the most common complementary medicines taken for in oncology patients, in cancer patients.
Sir, there is actually another problem in the lower strata patients, that means like people who come from low income levels or something like that they are mostly like culturally leaned. So that's the problem which I have been facing a lot. Means they just don't consider anything like that. Means they don't listen. Even they come with like they have no history of any alcoholism or something, but they just come in their old age with like heavy liver injury, and that's something very concerning. But that's not a question. That's just my experience. Nothing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
APJ, please continue.
yeah. So I like to share one thing which worked about this anecdotal thing. Now, I was also struggling with my grandfather, particularly. He wouldn't even listen to anything. He's like almost 90 years old. So he'll always say, I know more than you. And he's actually very healthy also. I can't advise him. He has no disease or anything. So the thing is, I showed him this article about Bhopal or some Madhya Pradesh place where remdesivir was sold to many patients and 90% of them recovered. And then it was found later on that it was water, glucose water. So then I told him, see, this water also cured 90% patients. So this is what blind trials do, and this is why you have to, see whether it is actually affecting or the body itself is recovering. Now we can't start selling glucose water as a treatment for COVID, right? So then he got some understanding, and now at least he said that, okay, I'll first consider modern medicine, and then if I'm not comfortable, then I'll go to traditional one. So this incident of 90% treatment by glucose waters, this thing worked for him.
Oh,
Yeah.
I might add to that. We are actually selling glucose water for COVID now, 2DG. It's just glorified glucose water, and it's been sold at 990 rupees per packet.
Let's see, we'll discuss about that as well later on. Manik, do you want to ask something?
So I have a question. I have a small question. I'm not a medical expert or anything, but the problem is nowadays, at least educated folks, the grandfather and parents, we can leave. They have a different mindset. But even educated folks who are passionate about Ayush, they think that if a publication is done, it means that's science. That's it. They won't they think that if a study is published, that's it, and it is final. Now a study published ho gaya, this is a proof. So is there a common resource which is debunking these studies, like yes, Nachiketa, I think he debunked that Patanjali study that they gave it to only healthy individuals or something, because this will start happening more. They'll keep publishing something, and once it's published, people will just show this to our faces that, okay, this is published, that's it, ho gaya, kaam khatam. So how to counter that?
Just ask them to read the paper, that's all. That debunks everything.
The problem is people don't understand those papers, and they think कि PubMed पे कुछ आया है तो इसका मतलब वो एक study हो गया है.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at how to, I mean, if there is some major paper like Coronal, which was actually, they advertised it and publicized it so much that we actually, a lot of people actually criticized it, and there was very good write-up in The Wire by Ronak about it. And it was beautiful. So, I mean, those resources are very good for us to make other people understand that the science is actually not right in it. Now, a lot of these publications, if you look at PubMed, they don't come in mainstream journals. They come in alternative medicine journals. And most of the alternative medicine journals do not have a section known as correspondence or letter to editor. There actually other scientists can write about a published study saying that, this was not done right, or there were some problems with it, things like that. Now, they don't have such a section. They intentionally do that because they don't want to get letters right, left, and center on all the publications, because most of the publications are actually very poor quality and methodologically heavily flawed. Now, this is an issue, and I think an important aspect is to actually differentiate between scientific literacy and just literacy, because all the educated people that we talk about here are actually literate, but they're not scientifically literate. And I think as part of science communication, people like doctors and physicians and scientists should come to the forefront in social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook and everything, and they should keep debunking this one by one, and that's the only way out. Put out information more and more.
Yeah, one small thing, this peer review thing. Suppose somebody sends me a link to a study. How do I confirm whether this was like peer reviewed by good scientists or a strong scientist team? How do I confirm this?
So, I mean, you cannot actually confirm who peer reviewed it because it's mostly a blind peer review. So we don't know who actually peer reviewed it, except for some journals. They actually mention the name of the investigators or the peer reviewers who actually, for example, if you look at Frontiers, they have some journals where they actually mention who has peer reviewed that particular published study. So you can see and identify. But most of the journals don't give out the peer review names because it is anonymous. But a peer reviewed journal is supposedly either a single blind or a double blind peer review, and that we take it as at face value. But you look at all the complementary and alternative medicine. I mean, you look at this journal called Journal of Integrative Ayurveda. It's terrible. I mean, if you look at it's peer reviewed though. It's terrible, but it's peer reviewed by Ayurvedic physicians only. And it contains a lot of nonsense, and it's on PubMed also. And I mean, I think scientific literacy is something that we actually have to start from the school level. You have to teach children about critical thinking instead of, just general civics and economics and all that. Integration, differentiation. I don't know what the use of that thing was for me now. But I think critical thinking is what we should teach in schools, and only then you have scientific literacy later on.
Can you name that journal again, doctor?
It's called Journal of Integrative Ayurvedic Medicine. JAIM, Journal of Ayurveda Integrative Medicine, JAIM. A lot of stuff comes. I don't think you should read it though, because it's quite bad.
Thanks a lot, doc. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Manik, do you want to ask something?
Hello.
Yeah, Manik, we can hear you. Please continue.
My question was that if Giloy has developed liver issues, but the medicines which the doctors prefer has also side effects, they are not 100%. There does not have any side effect. You are saying that?
No,
Manik,
compared to which medicine? Giloy versus compared to which medicine?
Which the doctors recommend.
So first of all, if you look at why Giloy was preferred or used, is actually illogical, unreasonable, because Giloy is given for something known as immune boosting. Now, immune boosting has no clinical relevance. It is a marketing term. It is just made so that people buy more stuff. You cannot boost your immunity. Now, I think with Giloy, we understand that you can actually dysregulate your immunity. A normal immune person with a normal immune system, they took Giloy and their immune system got so much dysregulated, it developed autoimmune liver disease. So yes, there is some boosting happening, but not for our benefit. So if you look at those marketing terms, immune boosting, these are actually not needed in our lives. We don't need it. You have a good healthy life, good diet, and exercise, lifestyle, whatever. You're okay. You're okay with it. You don't need to boost anything. So the reason for why Giloy was prescribed in the first place is wrong. That is why we are actually having unnecessary side effects, which means you should not use Giloy for such a particular reason.
Mukul, please ask your question.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah,
am I audible?
Please continue. Yes.
Yeah, big thanks to Chirag ji and Dr. Saab for taking out the valuable time. Now, I have heard about this Arisht being prescribed by Ayurvedic doctors for COVID. And I have taken Arisht in the past. And of late, for past 2-3 years, I've been getting my lipid profile tested, and continuously I have seen LDL cholesterol and VLDL high levels. So is Arisht responsible for this higher levels of LDL and VLDL cholesterol, Dr.
Yeah, hi Mukul. So if you look at what Arisht is, or Arishtam, what we say in South, it's actually alcohol. So what they do is they put Vitis vinifera, which is grapes, or something known as Woodfordia fruticosa, which is actually a small herb, which has the potential to promote natural alcohol production. So any Arisht that you see contains alcohol, and alcohol will definitely increase your LDL and all those stuff. So I would suggest that if there is no evidence for us to use such a product for COVID or for any other reason, I would suggest stopping it and then rechecking your lipid profile after a whole month, and you will see that maybe it has actually come down. And then you can say that it is probably because of the Arisht you have been consuming. So Arisht contains alcohol, and alcohol can actually derange your lipid profile.
Okay, I've taken Arist 6 or 7 years ago. So after after 6 7 years, still the cholesterol levels may increase.
No, unlikely, because it might be that you have family history of diabetes or cholesterol or heart disease or something, and then you have something known as metabolic syndrome where you can have high cholesterol levels. Arista may not be the reason for that, but if you are using Arista in the short term and then finding a high cholesterol level and all that, stopping Arista and looking at cholesterol again and seeing that it is normalized, only then you can say it is because of the Arista, not because you have used Arista so long back that you can say now your cholesterol is because of that, because there is no temporal correlation. It's so long back. I think you have to actually check up other things also, your thyroid and diabetes and everything, and then come to a conclusion.
Okay, okay. Thank you, doctor.
Hi, Mini, you can ask your question. Mini, please ask your
Yeah,
question.
sorry, yeah. Hi, Siraj, this is Mini here. There is so much of talk about this. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, there's so much of this talk about Swarna Bhasmam and other heavy metals, without any efficacy of Swarna Bhasmam being proven, or it is just incinerated heavy metal. And how is it going to be effective, or the bioefficacy? Nothing is established, and still I see during these COVID times, Swarna Bhasmam has become a craze along with Giloy. And also along with spirulina and algae, we very well know that there are a lot of these heavy metals that are associated, which is not exactly good for us. Now, what do we do to dispel that Swarna Bhasmam is totally not bioavailable to your body? And how do we say that this is not incinerated metal is not going to help you in any way?
Yeah, hi, Mini. Thanks for the question. I think this is very important because in children, this is very commonly used, Swarna
Yes.
Bhasma.
Yes.
One is to make them fairer when they grow up, and the second is to increase their immunity and they grow healthy. And actually speaking, the Swarna Bhasma combination, I mean, the actual process of making Swarna Bhasma, if you go through that, you'll
Yes.
actually see that this gold is never absorbed in the body.
Not at
You know,
all.
not at all. It's a complete inert kind of a heavy metal. It just
Exactly.
passes out of your body.
Exactly.
Nothing happens.
Yes.
Yeah. So now these are all traditional thoughts passed on from old literature that people are still following now. These are all just traditional methods and without absolutely no evidence to back it up. But I have seen that a few of children, I have seen actually 3 or 4 kids in the last maybe 3 years who have actually consumed some type of Swarna Basma, which was actually liquid, powdered and mixed with liquid and taken, and they actually developed gold-induced cholestatic hepatitis.
Yes.
And this is very well known. Gold
Yes.
can actually damage the liver and cause something known as cholestatic hepatitis, which can lead to severe itching and jaundice. And this is there, and that is because of an active form of the gold that they have actually produced inadvertently during the process.
Exactly.
And otherwise there is no point in using gold for anything, because you don't need gold in your normal daily physiological activities.
I was working with I was commissioned by an Ayurvedic company to work on Swarna Basmam, and they thought that if I encapsulate Swarna Basmam, it will be more acceptable to the people. I will not name the company for confidential reasons. And encapsulation. So
No,
I
I
said,
mean,
because when you encapsulate it, it is a more appealing form of dosage. And it is also very easy to lure people that now it has got a form like a caplet or a capsule, or like a, how do I say, like, so people will take it. And they worked on it, they encapsulated it. And the FDA did not give them the permission to market it, but then somehow surreptitiously they marketed it. And I'm surprised now in COVID, again people are saying Swarna Basmam is the answer. So I just fail to understand, like you explained, it's a heavy metal, and how is it going to be bioavailable to your body? It's just terrible. Where are we going?
Yeah, I mean, not just Swarna Bhasma. In that sense, a lot of stuff has been marketed like that. For example, the arsenicum album in homeopathy. I mean, there is no arsenic in it in the first place. It's
Yes.
beyond Avogadro's law. It's beyond Avogadro's number. And
Yes.
then they say that it actually causes some kind of physiological effect in the human body. I mean, the same thing goes with Swarna Bhasma, because Swarna Bhasma has been promoted from traditional values to cause something in the body, and that is the marketing value, not
Yes.
the efficacy.
Yes.
And this is not with Swarna Bhasma, it is with every Ayurvedic drug that you see.
That's right.
I mean, it has been marketed because of some appeal to faith and belief and religion and something.
Exactly.
That's it.
So it
That's
is
it.
very,
Yeah.
I think it is very important for us. I'm a pharmacologist. It's very important for us in our place to educate everybody of certain terms like bioefficacy about such things, so that even the person on the road knows that it is very difficult to assimilate certain drugs into your body. Like for example, Lehium. Lehium has got so much of lipid, so much of lipid. I mean, why would you want to load your body of so much with lipid? It is time to demystify this and demystify it from the book or whatever, the scriptures or whatever. Because health is beyond all this. Health is our constitutional right. We need to have a good, healthy life. And I think it is our job to make people question. Okay, gold, it cannot be, or Lehium or Arishtam, like somebody said. It's simply alcohol. You might as well have a glass of old rum and go to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point here is that there is something known as Ajamamsa Rasayanam in traditional Ayurveda,
Yeah.
where they actually give mutton fat, fat from the goat mixed with
Yes.
herbs
Yes.
for young men who wants to go to the gym and get body build the natural way.
Yes.
And I have treated at least 7 young men with severe fatty liver disease because of Ajamamsa Rasayana. And they take it because they think it's natural, it is safe, it is written in the
Yes.
scriptures, but
Yes.
absolutely no studies done on it. And
Absolutely.
it's all appeal to faith and belief, appeal to
Absolutely.
nature and nothing else.
Absolutely. And if anybody who argues with me saying Ayurveda has the largest number of years of clinical trials conducted, it's a very wrong argument. Because we have not documented any of the after effects, we have not documented LD5, nothing. We have not documented any of those results. So to defend that by saying that it is the oldest clinical trial, 5,000 or 6,000 years since Charak Samhita was written, I think that is, again, it's another lore. It is not scientifically validated at all.
Yes, many got your point as well about the scripture thing, because it is not scientifically recorded. Sam, do you want to ask anything?
Yes. Hey,
Please
thanks
go
for
ahead.
asking this. My question was regarding Ayurvedic drugs which are sold by reputable companies. I'll take the example of Zomato, which has recently started their nutrition division, and they sell ashwagandha, which is a single herb and not a combination of different multiple Ayurvedic ingredients. So is that also unsafe, or has it been found unsafe in any scientific studies? Should we be wary of taking it? Because I'm assuming that they would take the precaution to have it prepared in scientific environments where it is not contaminated with heavy metals and all. But would ashwagandha by itself be harmful to people? Should people be should people refrain from taking it? That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can have a complete whole space with regards to ashwagandha, because it's one thing that keeps haunting me everywhere I go. So, I mean, if you look at ashwagandha, now it's actually something like a super herb. Ashwagandha can be used for anxiety. It can be used for bodybuilding. It can improve your cortisol levels. It can actually, it's an anti-inflammatory, can be used for arthritis. It has anti-cancer properties. You name it, it's there in ashwagandha. Now, if you go back and look at the evidence, I mean, there are a lot of studies done on ashwagandha, a lot. And it has been also been done in patients with influenza, viral fevers and everything, and hundreds of studies. But if you actually look at each and every study, which I have been reading about ashwagandha for a very long time. And I have actually come across very good systematic reviews and meta-analysis of ashwagandha recently published in 2019 and 2021. You can also check it in Biomed complementary journals. What they have actually identified is that almost all the studies done on ashwagandha are of very poor quality, and the clinical endpoints that they have chosen in most of the studies are actually very weak endpoints, in the sense that it's either a blood investigation, or it's either some inflammatory marker, or it's some oxygenation level and things like that. So there is no actual clinical endpoint. And most of these systematic reviews and meta-analysis actually, which is the highest level of evidence, they say that ashwagandha for any matter, for any disease condition where it is actually promoted for, the quality of evidence is so low because the number of studies and the quality of studies that has been done are very heterogeneous, because every study has a different endpoint and you cannot actually come to a good conclusion. So evidence wise speaking, there is no point of using ashwagandha for any clinical disease at the moment. But ashwagandha is actually a herb with a lot of potential. It has something known as withanolides. Withanolides actually have some anti-anxiety and anti-stress factor and whatnot, but this is actually not shown in actual human trials. It is there in animal models and in cell stress studies, but not in human trials. Now, if you promote ashwagandha for, for example, fitness or bodybuilding or whatever, it is based on very poor evidence. And the second aspect of it is safety. There is a paper in the journal called Liver International. It's a collaborative work by the United States DILI network and the Iceland DILI network, where they actually identified about 9 or 10 cases of ashwagandha related severe liver injury. So ashwagandha is not a completely safe plant. Ashwagandha can cause liver injury, and this series you can just go to PubMed and type ashwagandha liver toxicity, and the first paper that comes out will be this particular study. The paper is by Bjornson et al. In Liver International. So ashwagandha is definitely not a fully safe herb. One should be very cautious in using it, because the kind of injury that ashwagandha forms in a human body is actually idiosyncratic, which means there is no dose dependency. Anybody can get that injury even with a single dose. So unless and until we have better quality studies to assess efficacy as well as safety, and in specific human disease conditions, I would not suggest ashwagandha at all.
Thank you, Doc. That answers my question.
Anshul, please ask your question.
Hello, Dr. Phillips. Hello, Chirag. It's been a pleasure actually to listen to you guys, and especially Dr. Phillips. I've been following you for quite some time, and actually I've been shocked to look at the ill effects of herbs and whatnot. My question specifically is in regards to Swarnabhasma, just because Miss Minnie Nair mentioned it. My father had undergone a paralysis attack last year, after which he was given Ayurvedic drugs like Swarnabhasma and a combination of those, and the pulmonologist and everyone else, the neurologist who treated him at that time, had advised us against taking Ayurvedic medicines of any kind. So I'm not denying the fact that the modern medicine doctors actually cautioned us against it, but they said it's just because they will not be able to take any responsibility for it, and because he was not able to walk, and as such, we did decide to go for Ayurvedic medicines, Bhasma included, ashwagandha and whatnot. There is a tablet called Arogya Vatik from Patanjali. It has many of the drugs like that. But after that, my main question here is, after that, he was diagnosed with a urethral stricture. Dr. Phillips, do you have you come across any patients who have also developed problems like you mentioned, kidney problems? So they have also developed problems like urethral strictures and whatnot by the use of herbal drugs. Thanks.
Yeah, hi Anshul. So I was thinking, you said your grandfather was sick with paralysis?
No, my father was my father had a paralysis attack. He was only 52 last year.
Yeah. Okay. So I presume that probably he was also on a urinary catheter during this time.
Yes, he was on a urinary catheter.
So that is one of the common causes for a urethral stricture. You can have some kind of inflammation because a foreign body, a urinary catheter is inside, and that can actually cause a urethral stricture. I have not come across any Ayurvedic herbals specifically causing urethral stricture, but they can actually cause kidney disease per se, but not urethral stricture. So I presume the urinary catheter in long term actually might have actually caused the urethral stricture.
Okay, sir, but this is just observational thing that my father actually complained of not feeling well after taking Ayurvedic medicines, which is why we actually stopped it altogether. But resumed it once again after he said, just because he felt like it. And this is just a observational thing. My family has actually been taking Ayurvedic medicines for a long time, especially after Patanjali came into being. So it was always like they took the medicine. It was not a big disease like you mentioned, so it may be self healed or something like that, and then they left it. So if they took a powder of 100 gram, they took only 20-25 grams, and then they left it. And I have I have actually hundreds of bottles inside my home of tablets and powders which are like semi used or even partially used. So do you think, just because there is no documented evidence of Ayurvedic medicines actually doing the work, of the benefits of it, that people, when they actually go for Ayurvedic medicines, they just self heal, and they think it, like it's common in homeopathy also, like you mentioned, that they are healed because of Ayurvedic medicine?
Yeah, this is one very important point, because the person can actually get better even without the medicine. Right. So this is why we need actual placebo controlled trials to identify efficacy. For example, you have a standard of care, you compare that with the standard of care and say that, this particular new drug is better than the standard of care. Or you compare it with placebo and say that, this is as good as, at least as better than a placebo. So let us just give it. Now, when you look at personal experiences, we cannot actually identify what is worked and what has not worked, because it could work even without it, which is why personal experiences should not be a part of any scientific debate. If somebody comes with an anecdotal experience, a personal experience, don't listen to that person, because it doesn't matter. We don't have to listen to it. We don't have to waste that time.
Yeah, I think my query has been answered, and I'm really grateful to you, Liver Dog and Chirag, for hosting this. So
Thanks,
thank you.
Anshul. Arjun, you can please ask. Arjun Yadav, if you can hear me, please ask your question.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
हेलो हेलो।
हाँ अर्जुन जी बोलिए, आवाज आ रही है।
हाँ आ रही है आवाज। हाँ मुझे ये जानना था कि ये जो तुलसी और ये मतलब ये बोलते हैं तुलसी में बहुत क्वालिटीज होती हैं हर्बल, ये और एंटी और ये आंवला एलोवेरा का जूस, तो इसमें कोई, मैंने क्या है अभी कुछ 10-15 मिनट पहले दिन से आंवला एलोवेरा जूस पीना शुरू किया है, तो मतलब वो सही है कि नहीं? तुलसी तो मैंने ली नहीं अभी तक बिल्कुल भी, मतलब उसके बारे में जानना था मुझे।
देखो, ये जो आंवला और एलोवेरा जूस जो है ना, उसमें बहुत सारे चीज है, लेकिन हमें ये पता नहीं है कि वो चीज हमें हमारे शरीर में क्या करते हैं। ये सब मार्केटेड प्रोडक्ट्स बोलते हैं ना, हम बोलते हैं कि एलोवेरा जूस पियो इम्यूनिटी बढ़ा दो, या आंवला जूस पियो और इम्यूनिटी बढ़ा दो। ये सब मार्केटेड है, इसमें कोई एविडेंस नहीं है। और ये भी है कि एलोवेरा लिवर के लिए अच्छा नहीं है। बहुत सारे पब्लिकेशन से जो बोलते हैं कि एलोवेरा से लिवर टॉक्सिसिटी हो जाता है। एक छोटा सा नहीं, एक बड़ा सा वेबसाइट है जिसका नाम है लिवर टॉक्स। आप उसमें जाके एक बार वो सर्च बार में टाइप करके देखो एलोवेरा, और उसके बाद आप टाइप करके देखो ग्रीन टी, आपको मिल जाएगा बहुत सारा जो केस रिपोर्ट्स और केस सीरीज जो हुआ है, जिसमें उन्होंने ये लिखा है कि एलोवेरा से लिवर खराब हो जाता है और ग्रीन टी एक्सट्रैक्ट से लिवर खराब हो जाता है। तो ये सब लेने के लिए आपके पास कोई एविडेंस है नहीं, तो क्यों लेना है? और ये भी है कि इसमें अगर कुछ हो गया तो आपका तो और तकलीफ बढ़ जाएगा ना। तो ये सब हमें करना नहीं है जिसमें कोई एविडेंस नहीं है।
हाँ, और ये ग्रीन टी भी नहीं लेना है ऐसे, अगर मैं वेट लॉस डाइट पे हूँ तो ग्रीन टी भी नहीं लेना?
ग्रीन टी से वेट लॉस नहीं होता है।
नहीं होता ग्रीन टी से वेट लॉस।
ग्रीन टी से वेट लॉस नहीं होता है। हाँ, हो जाता है कि अगर आप पूरे दिन में 3 बार ग्रीन टी लिया और कुछ नहीं लिया, तभी वेट लॉस हो जाता है, लेकिन ग्रीन टी से वेट लॉस नहीं होता।
थैंक यू।
Okay, Sujoy, please ask your question.
Yeah, hi. Thanks a lot. Sorry, I joined a little late, so I'm not too sure if the question was asked about Live 52. I think I heard one of the speakers mentioning that it contains a lot of herbs, and so it's actually not a good thing. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so I made a thread on Live 52 with a lot of details in it. So I'm actually planning on something bigger for better understanding on Live 52. Now, if you actually look at Live 52, I have nothing against Himalaya. They're a big company, but I have something against the science of Himalaya. Now, if you look at Live 52, it's actually a drug which has almost 23 herbs, and they claim that there are about more than 300 studies done on it. And these studies have been done from simple fatty liver disease to something as bad as advanced cirrhosis, alcoholic liver disease. And also they market Live 52 targeting people who consume alcohol. They say that, take Live 52 and your alcohol hangover will be much lesser. They actually promote this for alcohol consumption too. Now, another thing is that not just the liver part, they actually use Live 52 in children to increase their appetite. They use Live 52 in pregnant women to reduce vomiting. And they actually use Live 52 in dogs to increase dogs' appetite. So there is a Live 52 pet also. So if you look at that one particular drug and all the claims that it makes, there is a red flag. Something is wrong, because you cannot have a single drug doing all of this stuff. And also, it is important to note that any study that has been done on Live 52 has been completely done by Himalaya company itself. They have promoted the studies, they have done the studies, their scientists have published the studies. So there is a lot of conflict of interest. There is no replicative studies done by other groups on Live 52 showing that it is anything good for the liver. And most importantly, if you look at Live 52's meta-analysis, that is the highest level of evidence, right? That meta-analysis is actually done by Himalaya itself and published in a journal which is absolutely not available on the internet. It's a predatory fraud journal. They have published it. So is there evidence of Live 52 working? Absolutely not. This is a classical case of low evidence but high level of marketing. High level of marketing. And that is why this Live 52 has survived throughout the decades.
Thanks a lot, Abby. In fact, it's just so funny, but one of my uncles, he used to have Live 52, and he used to drink, and he unfortunately died at 52 as well. But it's unfortunate. Secondly, Dr. Abby, I want to ask you, so I have been taking, this Organic India herbal teas, and I think that's something I don't know whether you're planning to do a spaces on that at some point of time. I'd highly appreciate it, because that's something that I think a lot of urban India takes, and Organic India is very, very popular, right? It's got all these mixtures of tulsi, this and that. So I was just wondering, is there some work you've done on it? And I hope you can kind of host a space on that particular subject at some point of time.
Yeah, I think I think we should discuss more on this, because I have not myself done work on herbal teas, but if you look at the data available on the net in very good data repositories like Scopus and Embase and PubMed, you can actually see that there has been publications from 1980s on the toxicity of certain herbal teas. And a lot of these herbal teas are actually banned in the United States. And a lot of herbal teas with multi-herbal preparations are actually banned in the United States. You can just go in and check a paper by, I think it's from 1997, where they actually mention the type of herbal teas which are actually toxic to the liver and kidneys. So there is something known as a black cohosh tea. There is something known as chaparal kind of a tea, which are actually liver toxic. And these are not available in the market anymore. I'm not sure about India, because anything goes here. But I think somebody who's actually consuming a herbal tea, you please look at the name of that herbal tea, go to the internet and just type in that name. And if there is a toxicity associated with it, you will find it, and you please avoid it.
Thanks a lot. By the way, Dr. Abby, are you from St. John's?
Yes, I'm batch of 2001.
Okay, my brother is Vijay Kamath, Dr. Vijay Kamath. I don't know if you know
Oh,
him.
okay. I know.
Yeah, okay. He said to say hi to you.
Oh, hi back to him too. Thank you.
Yogiraj, please ask your question.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having this session. I just joined in late, but I've been taking notes. I have just three very general questions, which would be beneficial to all. Also, I think so. So, without getting into this, Ayurveda versus allopathy debate, I just want to ask that we've seen the kind of misinformation. I mean, I've seen it in the Beyond News that the Chavanprash, the immunity booster teas or Coronil, I don't know much about that. And then the Indian Medical Association promoting antibacterial bulbs, antivirus furniture, Horlicks immuno booster, and all of that. And people in the name of IMA, I don't know how, I don't know if it is a competent authority, because as much as I know, MCI might be the competent authority with respect to these. So my question regarding all of this is how to navigate through such misinformation. That is point number one. Second general question is you must have heard about the common usage of honey and lemon water as a liver detox that people take. So is it true, and how effective is it? That is the second one. And the last question is regarding the multivitamins. So I have this Muscle Blaze multivitamins box with me. I take it occasionally, not every day, because I'm quite skeptical about it. But it also makes a combination of the herbs along with the vitamins. See, I've looked up and I've found something like ginkgoba and some other herbs in it. So I just want to ask how effective are these multivitamins? So these are my three questions.
Yeah, so I mean, coming to your first question about even supposed regulatory bodies being part of misinformation, I think everybody would like to fish in murky waters. That's what is happening. Business opportunity for everyone all around in chaos, and that is what is happening with all of these advertisements. Now you can actually see and know that, I mean, you don't actually need any kind of literacy per se to know that a bulb cannot kill corona. You cannot have antibacterial and antiviral bulbs. You cannot have antiviral shirts. I mean, that's just real mockery of science, and that is simple as that.
Until maybe they are UV, which is cancerous anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there have been even bigger machines. I mean, there was recently on Times of India's cover page about Shycocan, something known as Shycocan, I think. A huge machine which is about 24,000 rupees, and asking people to buy it. It will kill all the corona in the room.
Yes.
Utter nonsense. Yeah,
Yes.
utter nonsense. And now this is just business tactics. And what we have to see is that when it comes to actual products like Chyawanprash and all that, I mean, Akshay Kumar is the one who was promoting it right, left, and center. Now he just poses with that Chyawanprash. I'm sure he doesn't take it. No, he poses with it. He gets his money and he goes off. And people should actually have that common sense. You don't need even a scientific sense to understand that this is just actually an advertisement. And if you look at Chyawanprash or type in Chyawanprash in PubMed, you will see a lot of opinionated reviews. A lot of people thinking that it is beneficial without any evidence backing it. That's the only thing that you can get on Chyawanprash. So I think a little bit of curiosity will actually go a long way. If people get that scientific temper in, it's easy to identify all of this misinformation. Very simple. Now, your second question was on, could you please repeat that?
Yeah, the second one is about honey and lemon water. Is it really a liver detox again, and should it be taken?
Yeah. So the funny part is actually liver is what actually detoxifies us. I don't think you should detoxify the liver, and the liver and kidneys are there for us to detoxify our body. And the detox term itself, I think it runs wild in the US and Europe, where they say that honey and lemon can detox anything in the world. But I think it's all wrong. It is a marketing gimmick. I think it's run by this so-called functional medicine specialists and so-called wellness experts to actually make your wallet or your purse less lighter, more lighter. You just take your cash away. There is nothing known as a detox. If there was a detox, we would all be living for thousands of years. So there is nothing like a detox. It's completely nonsense marketing stuff. And the third is about multivitamins. I mean, whether somebody should consume multivitamins over the counter, just to increase whatever health, wellness, all that stuff. If you actually look at a paper in Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, a very high impact journal, published in 2019, where they looked at a group of patients, about more than 3,000 patients who were on multivitamin supplements just for general health, and they followed them up over 10 years. Those consuming multivitamin supplements actually had a higher incidence of cancer. And this is published. So if you want to take a multivitamin without the reason for taking a multivitamin, know that it can actually harm you. Now, multivitamins and dietary supplements and all that actually are given to specific population or group of patients who actually require it. For example, in my practice, advanced cirrhosis patients, they cannot actually eat well because they have their belly full of fluid, they are weak, they have very low appetite. For such patients, we do supplement multivitamins and things like that, or whey proteins and other kind of proteins, egg proteins and all that. But for a healthy person, who has no other issues, I don't think you should just run behind a multivitamin supplement and feel that you have done something good for your body. In reality, you might be actually harming your body more. So I don't think that industry, it's an industry thing, right? The whole industry is hell-bent behind people saying that, wellness is the thing, not health, wellness. Everything is wellness. And that term actually gets stuck in people's minds and they go and do all this stuff. And I don't think that's actually required.
Thank you so much, sir. With regards to the first question, I completely agree with your point that scientific temper is very important and the curiosity to just Google things up and see for yourself. But my thing is, for example, I'd like to consider myself a fair bit progressive in that regard, that we know that it's not very healthy to base our decisions on something like an internal study done by Himalaya, as you said, or say Patanjali for that matter. But the scientific temper, when we hear something like IMA, Indian Medical Association Dwara Pramanit, that kind of kills our doubt, which makes us curious in the first place, is what I think, and that is why it is even more difficult to navigate through the misinformation, is what I feel like. How can we even bypass that layer, is what I was asking.
So I mean, I'm a member of the IMA. And if you look at the vision and the mission statements of IMA, it is actually a doctor support group, a voluntary group for doctor support. I think Dr. Jammi can actually give us more insights on that. He's a speaker here. But what I feel is that I don't think IMA is the regulatory body that is associated with what drugs or what medications or supplements a person should consume or take. No, that is not their job. That is not their duty. IMA is a doctor support group. IMA is there to protect doctors from, violence and stuff like that. I mean, if you look at their mission and vision statements, that is it. So if you see something like IMA on a bulb or a tube light, I say look away and then say IMA should not have done it. That's it. But you should not take it at face value.
Sir, understood. Thank you so much. One final doubt, maybe this one is a silly one, I don't know, but this is the most common one regarding neem intake. In general, for digestive systems health, people take a little bit of neem powder, and I think I have taken it quite sometimes, not regularly. Do you think it has any scientific basis on the efficacy, regarding the efficacy?
You mean neem?
Yes, sir. Dried neem powder.
Yeah. So
neem leaf powder.
if you look at the publications on neem, certain compounds and molecules in the neem, they have actually antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties, and that's it. The story ends there. There are no studies to show that neem actually improves. I mean, I'm not sure what digestive health means, because it's a very general term and actually it's a marketing term. I mean, there are no studies to show that neem actually improves or reduces any disease condition associated with the digestive system. But there are studies on neem and its compounds. Constituents of neem, like phytochemicals and phytocompounds, have been shown to have some kind of anti-inflammatory, antibacterial properties. But that's it. That's it.
May I make a brief comment?
Is it?
Yeah, please continue.
Thank you very much. Dr. Abbey, thank you very much for this, for taking all these questions. I think you're doing a marvelous job. I just wanted to add one small thing, a perspective from the United Kingdom. I've written about this Ayurveda versus modern medicine and so on, and I've come to the conclusion rapidly that we should not engage in this Ayurveda versus modern medicine. It is good medicine versus bad medicine, regardless of where you are. And Ayurveda and homeopathy, in my view, are purely in the sort of latter category. They don't have good high quality research at all to back any of their claims. But the point I wanted to make really was that this is not just a uniquely Indian phenomenon. I don't think we need to beat ourselves up that it's Indians who are science illiterate, or at least some Indians who are science illiterate or whatever. There's a company in the United Kingdom known as Vita Biotics. It is a 200 million pound turnover company. They make profits of almost 50 million pounds a year and pay taxes of 10 million pounds every year. It's a large company, and they have specialized in selling these kind of what are known in the official trade jargon as nutraceuticals. They are not a pharmaceutical company, but they are nutrition, and therefore the word that has been coined is nutraceuticals. And that is how they escape the tight, tough regulation of the medical drug regulatory agencies. So they market themselves entirely on doing exactly what people like, for example, this sort of immune booster drugs and Ayurveda and Chyawanprash and so on are doing. They claim, and if you go to their website, they say they are UK's #1 vitamin supplying company. Most people don't need vitamins, as you just pointed out. If they have a healthy diet, mixed diet, they're perfectly okay. They claim to be backed by science. They say no other UK vitamin company has such a diverse range of published research to support its products. And exactly as you pointed out, Dr. Abbey, they target chronic conditions for which modern medicine does not have a magic silver bullet cure, like arthritis, like feeling weak or tiredness or fatigue. These are all vague, non-specific clinical syndromes for which there is no clear-cut answer other than maybe the odd painkiller, an antidepressant or whatever. And they try and sell you the idea that if you take these vitamin pills or vitamin concoctions and so on, then you will get better. And people are buying these products. They are not prescribed on the NHS. They are not in the British National Formulary. They cannot be prescribed by a GP or a doctor in this country. But people actually spend their own good money on buying these products in what are known as health food shops. And they go and spend their money on these things. So the only point I wanted to make was that this is not a uniquely Indian phenomenon. It is worldwide. America is a large market for alternative and complementary medicines. The Chinese have got their own traditional Chinese medicine, TCM it's known as, and Britain has its own, Vita Biotics and companies like that which sell products like chondroitin sulfate for joint pains and such like. And so there you are. This is a remarkably worldwide phenomenon, I think, where even intelligent, educated lay people are prepared to put their money on the basis of faith and a desire and hope that is being offered. So all these people are guilty of selling hope on the basis of a completely non-scientific approach.
Yeah, that's true, sir. I mean, if you just look at that website of Vita Biotics, and there is this particular product known as Sleep Night, which is actually valerian root, and this is very commonly prescribed by Ayurveda physicians for insomnia. Valerian root. No studies to actually back it up, and they have very specifically mentioned on that product that Sleep Night is not tested on animals, so they're directly testing it on humans. And this is the kind of stuff that people actually buy and take for insomnia. And it's quite sad, because nutraceuticals, as you have rightly pointed out, sir, is actually one of the biggest industries that is running on scam, if I may use that word.
Yes. It's completely a scam. It's all faith-based and nothing else. Thank you.
Lokjit, you can ask your question.
Hello. Yeah. Sir, I would like to I want you to comment on Ministry of Ayush actively promoting all these medicines and drugs and homeopathy. Like they even advised it prevention for mucormycosis and all. And also even reputed journals publish treatments, studies on treatments of things which are biologically implausible, like if they are scientific journals, why do they go on publishing things which are actually not scientifically like possible? Like all these systems believe in things which don't exist. Then why do they need to publish things they study, like, or like they validate based on their principles?
Yeah, so I won't go in much deep regarding the Ministry of Ayush because tomorrow my Twitter account might not be there. But I would say something very credible on it, because one is that a Ministry of Ayush is actually very important. There is something known as National Institute for Complementary Medicines in the United States. Yes, they have a national institute which actually looks at all the complementary medicines and alternative practice in the United States, just like our Ministry of Ayush. But you know what they do? They actually regulate it. They don't promote it. So if there is a herb in the market, NICCM would actually say that, there is this herb in the market. There is no evidence to actually use it in that. So be aware of it. And if you want to try it, please talk to your physician or somebody and then try it. You may actually get some dangers out of it. You may actually benefit. We don't know. So they regulate it. But what is our ministry doing? They're promoting it. They're promoting homeopathy for mucormycosis. And I lost my sleep that night reading that document. Mucormycosis is such a life-threatening disease, and they're promoting placebo for it. I mean, it just beats me. So I think the Ministry of Ayush is important. It's important because it is the one that should regulate all these false practices and bring everything under its control, so that there is promotion of public health. Not promotion of products. It's doing the exact opposite here. It's doing the exact opposite. I think it's just lost its vision. But I think at some point, the Ministry of Ayush will actually be one of the most important bodies for public health in India. And I don't think it is late for it to do that. I think it just needs to get its advisory board in the right order and start regulating, so that people actually become more dependent and it becomes a more credible source of information, rather than doctors like me. If I say something, then I'm anti-national, anti-India, and anti-Ayush and all that. But if the Ministry of Ayush actually says it based on evidence, then it will stick with the people. And that is what the Ministry of Ayush should be doing. That is number one. And I believe that somewhere in the future, there is hope for the Ministry of Ayush. But currently, it doesn't look like it, because they have actually not even taken down that document where they promote homeopathy for mucormycosis. And I cannot sleep thinking about it any day. Can you believe it? Homeopathy for mucormycosis. Come on, and I think even Hanuman would rise up from his grave and just walk off. If he just saw that.
Mayank, you can ask your question.
Yeah, thanks. So my question was about a medicine, an Ayurvedic medicine, so-called medicine called Triphala. I was really skeptic about it, so I took it 2-3 times and it worked. I had constipation issues, so 2-3 times I took it and it worked well. But the 4th time I took it, it didn't work. So when I took it, it worked. So after 3-4 hours, it had an effect, and it felt really good after detoxifying, and my stomach was relieved. But when the 4th time it didn't work, my skepticism increased. So I wanted you to clarify it. Is it effective or it is not? Thanks.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at Triphala, it actually contains 3 fruits. That's the meaning of it, no? Triphala, 3 fruits. So it contains Indian gooseberry, something known as the myrobalan, that is a black myrobalan, and the Balearic myrobalan. That's what it contains. Now, Triphala is a very commonly used Ayurvedic laxative, and you are very, very, very right on it. But if you go look at the evidence of what Triphala actually does to your body, it's actually a nonsense, because what they say is that Triphala acts on all the 3 doshas together, and then it aligns the air space, fire, water, and earth space together in the body, and then that's how you purge. That is actually nonsense. But what happens actually is that in Triphala, you have gooseberry and you have myrobalan, and these actually contain certain compounds that irritate the gastric tract, the digestive tract, and that is how we actually have passage of stools. So it is a laxative, very true. Now, sometimes Triphala, if you use it continuously, there is something known as tachyphylaxis. It happens even with our normal laxatives also. That is, you keep continuously using it. At some point, your body gets adjusted to it, and then you don't have any more effect or benefit from it. This is known as tachyphylaxis. You keep using one particular thing, it gets adjusted. Now, the problem with Triphala is that, if it's a good laxative, is it better than the current laxatives? We have no studies on it. There is no evidence. It has been traditionally written that it's good as a laxative, and so people use it and market it. I have actually analyzed. It's part of I have actually posted on it on Twitter about Triphala from 3 companies. 3 big companies in India. I've taken Triphala and actually looked into the components, and you can actually see that most of the components are very different. I mean, the fruits might be there, but a lot of other adulterants, contaminants, and fibers and everything was there in that. And so I don't know if it's actually Triphala really acting as a laxative or something they add to the Triphala. I'm not very sure, because all of these are actually mysterious. The questions remain. I cannot actually answer that question clearly because there is no evidence for me to say that Triphala works or not. But traditionally, people think it works. And if you ask me, the mind, if somebody thinks that, taking it and, you are going to have a good bowel movement in the morning, you might actually have a good bowel moment. It might not be the drug that you've taken, but, the feeling that you want to go makes you go. So I don't know if, I cannot actually give you a strong data to support the use of Triphala, but it has been it's important to note that every Triphala that you buy from different companies may not be of the same quality because there is no regulation to it. Some might have contaminants and adulterants, and the consumer should be aware of it.
Thanks a lot. One small question. These Ayurvedic soaps, so-called, they are said that they are made of multani mitti. So are they actually beneficial or it's just a scam?
Can you please repeat that first part? I could not hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please continue.
Okay, so my question was the soaps called the soaps made of multani mitti. They are Ayurvedic soaps. Are they actually good for your skin or are they not?
So, Mayank, we are just discussing the oral thing about not the application of the soaps and other things for now. We'll keep a
Okay.
dermatologist for that in the
No,
space.
they were said that they were made of Ayurveda. They're part of Ayurvedic also. Okay. Thanks anyway.
I had a question. Dr. Abhi, you briefly you spoke about the Chyawanprash. So can you just elaborate on that? Like, does it have any benefits? Does it not have any benefits? Is it harmful, or is it just like homeopathy?
Yeah, if you look at Chyawanprash, I'm talking purely from a scientific and evidence point of view. And if you look at studies on Chyawanprash, there are none. But if you look at reviews on Chyawanprash, there are many. Even on PubMed. And all of these reviews are actually short narratives from old world literature. It's not evidence-based at all. And where they have actually speculated that, Chyawanprash contains amla, so it is good for immunity because vitamin C is there. Or Chyawanprash contains this particular herb, so it is good for anti-inflammation, like that. So it's all a speculative kind of a thing where it has been mentioned that Chyawanprash, an Ayurvedic recipe, which has been traditionally thought to be effective, is still effective. But absolutely no studies to show that Chyawanprash actually does anything in the body. But people actually buy and eat, consume it because it has been, even in my childhood, I still remember a person used to come home and make Chyawanprash for all of us. And at that time, I never knew what it was. And it used to taste like, I don't know to use the word, but it tastes like it tastes like chewing on socks. It was bad. But we used to take it because my grandmother used to feed it to us. And the whole point now I understand is that because it was being taught that way, because you give Chyawanprash to kids and they will grow healthy and they will have better memory and things like that. But if you ask me, scientific point of view, evidence generation point of view, none of these Ayurvedic traditional products have been tested. They're not tested. And because they are not tested, we actually don't know their efficacy or their safety.
Ashraf,
Thank
you
you.
can
Thank
ask
you.
your question.
Yeah, hi. Now, I've generally been very skeptical on the alternative medicine because of my father passed away and he was very heavy on Ayurveda and homeopathy medicine. Now, I listen to a lot of podcasts since past 6 8 months on immunity, building immunity. And though I'm very skeptical on these, the alternative medicine, the turmeric keeps coming up in different podcasts. And there's some very credible voices like Peter Attia and other than that. So is there any efficacy on turmeric, or is this something which is being studied?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think we actually needed to talk on turmeric too. So if you look at turmeric per se, the whole turmeric is not what is actually beneficial. There is something known as curcuminoid, which is the bioactive compound that we see in turmeric, and that is what is actually thought to have biological effects, physiological effects in the body. Now, turmeric studies are thousands. I mean, you name it, it's there for everything. It's there for infections, for arthritis, for inflammatory bowel disease, for cancers. You name it, turmeric is there. It's like the hero of the hour. Now, the issue with turmeric studies is that one, there is this thing called haldi doodh, where people mix a little bit of turmeric in the milk and then have it and say that their immunity is boosted or whatever. Now, actual turmeric is not absorbed in the body. It has very, very low bioavailability. It is not absorbed. So there is no beneficial effect. Because of this, turmeric is actually prepared along with pepper, because that actually increases its absorption in the small intestine. So if you look at all the formulations, it contains black pepper also with it. Now people don't use turmeric with black pepper because it causes a lot of gastritis. They use curcuminoid, which is actually the bioactive component of turmeric. So if you look at all the systematic reviews and meta-analysis on curcumin or turmeric per se, what it says is that there is some benefit on reducing the cholesterol, LDL. There is some benefit in diabetes. It's all not very well clarified. It's still query. You need more studies. You need better data. You need better population. You need better methods and things like that. The only thing curcumin has been found to show some benefit is actually one is in osteoarthritis, where they say that adding curcumin along with your standard of care actually improves the pain and mobility, things like that. But this is based on very small number of randomized trials. And the second is something known as inflammatory bowel disease, a condition known as ulcerative colitis, where there are multiple ulcers in the small and large intestine, and people who are on standard of care, to maintain remission of the disease, addition of curcumin may be useful. That's it. And anything else beyond this, it's just marketing for the turmeric, because all this immunity boosting, clearance of viral RNA from the body, this turmeric, that kind of turmeric, it's just bogus. I don't think any of that actually works, because none of that actually has been studied. And still, turmeric is one of the most useless herb which has been maximally studied, studies even going on, without any clear benefits for it.
Thank you. Appreciate. Very grateful for your answer. Appreciate it.
Okay, audience, will close this space in another 10 minutes. I'm taking 2 more questions and then doctor will give the ending notes. Katyusha, if you can ask a question.
Hello. Yeah. Am
Yeah.
I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Please continue.
What I feel is, I don't have a question. I just want to say that people should be given proper information about the efficacy or the harm done by all these Ayurvedic herbs, because now even MNCs have started cashing in on people's vulnerabilities. Even Amway, a multinational company which has its presence in hundreds countries worldwide, they've started selling Triphala and other herbs here at 4 to 6 times the cost. So, people are just actually going from one herbal brand to another and probably consuming the same thing. So, we need to have proper literature on this, proper information on this. Otherwise, people are just going to be, exploited in this way.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that, and I think I mean, you mentioned Amway and companies like that. That's a completely different world altogether. You know, multi-level marketing, and that is where all the herbal and dietary supplements come. Companies like Herbalife, Amway, you know, Vestige, a lot of them, and then and that's purely business, nothing to do with healthcare. Pure business and marketing, nothing to do with healthcare. Very low on evidence, but very high on bad science. Completely bad science.
Rashika, do you want to ask something?
Actually, all my questions have been answered by him already. I just DM him all the time. He knows that I DM if there's any question.
Okay, cool. So, doctor, what I just have one more question. See, I understand Ayurveda comes from a religious belief as well. People follow Ayurveda because we know a certain section of the society is like very much into that religion belief system. But I want to know, you must be knowing it better, or do we see the Ayurvedic similar stuff coming from the other religions as well in India specifically?
I mean, we have Unani. Unani is basically Perso-Arabic. Perso-Arabic kind of practice, and Unani also actually has. I mean, we have a council for Unani. It's part of the Ayush also. And what happens is that Unani also follows similar pathways of Ayurveda, where there is tridosha in Ayurveda. In Unani, it is actually four doshas: yellow bile, black bile, sputum, and blood, bad blood. So instead of that, in Ayurveda, it is gas, bile, and phlegm. So it's very it's all intricate, and I think these have all budded out from these religious and faith-based practices, and it's not purely based on religion. I mean it's not purely based on the Hindu religion and its scriptures, but we have a lot of practices which are actually selectively regional based. For example, if you take Siddha. Siddha is actually practiced heavily in Tamil Nadu and not in other places. We have actually something known as some practices which are coming under Unani, known as hijama, where they do cupping and bloodletting. You know, these are all old allopathic practices, and there are a lot of differences from different places, different countries, where religion-based specific practices still exist, especially in African countries.
Okay, you can give your ending notes now. We can then end this piece.
I
Yeah.
just
So
Yeah, Rishika, please continue.
sorry, I interrupted. So I just wanted to add to this point where you were asking about any cultural based practices. So in my patients, I've seen mostly, there are some regions, where they come that, so and so Baba, that is a shaman or a mystic, gave them bhabhuti. So this bhabhuti thing, I never understood what it is, but and most of the parts of the India with psychiatric or psychological patients, they have this thing that they come with this thing that this Baba gave me this thing, and mostly they are schizophrenic patients. So what they'll do is that they come with this notion that I was cured by so and so thing, and they will try to tell us that uh, you should believe in this, like how the other person was saying that why this Giloy study was not conducted in so and so, and he was arguing unnecessarily without knowing what an RCT is or anything else. So just wanted to add, this bhabhuti thing I never understood. Maybe if sir could shed some light on it.
So, Rashika, also I would like to add, next space I'm planning on the same topic, because in India there is a menace going on. भूत चढ़ गया है आपको या फिर कुछ
Exactly.
पागलपन
Yeah.
उतारने के लिए
So,
they take you to
yeah.
the temples and other places, and they offer alcohol to the god and all those stuff to in the exchange of that thing. So I really want to understand from the mental health specialist what is the reason behind it and why people are doing that.
Sure. Let sir conclude what he was doing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, thank you to Chirag for hosting this excellent Spaces session, and I'm very happy that I mean we could all discuss a lot on science, which is I keep it very close to my heart, and for a change, I was not trolled badly. I mean, it was all good, selective, and very good. I mean, productive discussions with everyone, and I hope we could do this again on such topics, and maybe we can have more participation from other doctors, and we could hear out from there also the kind of experiences that they have on alternative medicine and things like that. And thank you for everyone listening to this and asking me questions, because I also learn a lot by interacting with you all. And thank you, Chirag, once again for this spaces.
Thank you, doctor, for coming. Thank you for your time. Thank you, audience, for attending. Bye, everyone. Good night.
Good night.